I heard somebody say that there was like fencing around Skid Row now to kind of keep people from...
by MacArthur Park.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've fenced off all the... They used to have all these vendors selling like everything you can imagine, from clothing to food to whatever, shoes, everything. And a lot of them are selling drugs.
Oh.
So they're trying to make it harder for them.
I was like, man, those guys are in like a fenced-in living area now.
Yeah, I know.
So a gated community.
All right, Vivian. Vivian, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Boise, Idaho. I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And we moved up to Boise, actually to Parma, when I was just a kid. I think I was like 2 or 3. And we moved over to Parma to go and be with my grandfather, who was having a hard time like managing the farm because of his age. Mm-hmm. And my uncle was out there too, and his family. My mom is a pharmacist and ended up becoming the pharmacist of the men's max prison out in Cuna. And so we ended up moving to Boise when I was probably 4 or 5. So I pretty much grew up there my entire life.
What was your family like?
My mom, very stern Catholic woman, very German. She was vocal, but never physical. She married my first stepdad when I was 4, and he was a cop. And so I had like this authority figure in my house all the time. My mom was like the gentle person in the family, and he did all of the punishing. From the time I was young, the physical abuse was pretty predominant. It started basically with, what he would call is like tearing our ass off. And he would put on this leather glove that didn't have fingertips on it. And he would make my older sister and I take our pants off and our underwear and lay over his lap. And he would spank us with that leather glove on. And if we cried, it was worse. And so you learn to become really stoic when you're having to hold all of that in. And he would force us to take naps and stuff like that. And I got really good at pretending to be asleep, because if he would come in and see that we were awake, we would have our asses torn off. And so as a child, that was pretty much my entire existence, was being beaten. And I didn't realize that that wasn't the norm. You know, it wasn't something I would go to school and talk to my friends about, because I thought that every child was going through that. And I grew up in Catholic school, but I was the ugly duckling growing up. I didn't fit in with my peers. I was different. And so I hung out with the boys a lot, playing football and soccer and wearing shorts underneath my Catholic schoolgirl uniform because I was always running. I would come home dirty all the time because of, playing soccer. I would slide and just be all busted up. And my mom worked a lot, like 6 days a week, 12 plus hours. So she was never home. So my stepdad kind of ruled the family. And I wasn't really a rebellious or bad child, but I was made to believe that I was. And so when I did something that was really bad, they would take everything out of my bedroom and leave me in my room with just a blanket and a pillow and a coffee can to go to the bathroom in. And I was allowed to come out of my room 1 time a day to empty my coffee can. And this was like a week or more. I would be locked in my room. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere or do anything, and I would just sit in there. My sister was allowed to bring me 1 meal a day. And it was like, a prison inside my house. And like I said, it was the norm. I didn't realize that other children weren't treated this way. So that was just kind of how I grew up. He was emotionally and verbally and physically abusive. I played a lot of sports growing up. That was kind of like my after-school babysitter. My mom had us enrolled in all sorts of things. I would go to the local college, Boise State, during the summertime and do weightlifting, gymnastics, swim team, all these different things, tennis. And during school, I was either playing soccer or wrestling. I did wrestling for a little bit. About 10 years old is when the sexual abuse with my stepdad started. And it started with him. We were laying on the couch watching TV, cuddling, and he ended up like reaching his hand around and touching my chest. And I knew that wasn't okay. And so I got it. He pretended he was asleep and that it was just, he was just reaching around to hug me, but you don't like really pinch people when you're sleeping. And so I got up and I went to my room because I didn't really know where else to go at that point. There was a moment after that where I threatened to run away. And he told me that I could leave the house with what I had contributed. And so he stripped me naked and pushed me outside in the neighborhood. And so I'm standing in my front yard for everybody to see, just buck naked as a child, and mortifying. It's not something that anybody should experience, let alone as a child.
And he was a cop.
He was a cop, yeah. A lot of his punishments were kind of based around almost like being in jail. It was odd. Like when they would take things out of my room, they would just line it up in the hallway. We had an 8-bedroom, 4-bathroom house, and so I had this huge hallway that went to my room, and everything, my bookshelves and toys and everything was just lined up in the hallway, and I was just locked in my room. The last time that he did that, there was a 2x4 that had been in the backyard, and so I climbed out of my bedroom window and put the 2x4 up to the window so I was able to climb back up in if I needed to. And I went to the neighbor's house, and he was a lawyer. I went to school with his son, and he's now actually part of the legislature in Boise. But I went to his house, and I was like, you need to call the cops. I'm having a hard time, like, at home, and I'm being beaten and molested. And he's like, okay, I'll call the police. And so he's like, go back home, and I'll call the cops. Well, the cop that he called was my dad. And so when I went back home, I climbed up the 2x4 into my bedroom, and he's standing there in my room with his arms folded. And like the utter feeling of defeat, it was just, I just knew that it was going to be really bad after that. And so he made me come in my room, and I climbed in the window, and he took off his belt, and he wrapped it around my throat and hung it over the fan in my room. And he had me hanging there for a little while, and he just let me. I don't even know if he said or did anything, but after that, like, he let me down, and I was locked in my room again for quite some time. And then when I was able to come out of my room, they hadn't fed me that day. So I ended up going to the kitchen at like 3 o'clock in the morning just to eat some bread. And when I was eating the bread, I guess he had heard me. And so he came out of the bedroom, and he had a gun. And I was like trying to choke down the bread so that he didn't see that I was eating, because I wasn't supposed to be eating. I was in trouble. And he put the gun to my head, and I choked, and I ended up choking, and he waited until like I was on the floor, almost passed out, until he gave me the Heimlich. I ended up throwing up the bread, and then he made me eat that off of the ground. Just, I don't even know how to describe most of the things that happened.
Was your mom aware that this was going on?
Some. Some of it she was aware of. Most of it she wasn't. And a lot of the times he would threaten my sister and I, like, if you say anything to your mom, I'll kill you. And I believed him. I mean, we had a an arsenal of weapons in our house, and he was a cop. Of course, I believed him. And so my sister and I really never said anything. She didn't get a lot of the same stuff that I did. Like, she was never molested. She was hardly ever beaten. It was like he zeroed in on me for some reason. And so through all of that, like, the years, it just progressively got worse. And at the age of 12, like, I was a pack rat when I was a kid, and I had a lot of stuff, and that was kind of my way of controlling my life. And so I like craft things, Barbies, that kind of stuff. And when he would make me clean my room, my mom had gone to the Oregon coast one year, and I would beg her, please take us with you, because anytime she would leave is when shit got bad. And she didn't take us with her. And he told me, he set this like white timer, the kitchen timer, in front of my bedroom door. And he was like, you have 10 minutes to clean your room, which was impossible. Like, I had so much stuff. And so every time I didn't clean my room properly, by the time the timer went off, he would come in and just rip me a new one. Like, and he ended up spanking me so much throughout the day that I was bleeding. But I finally finished my room, and at that point, like, it went from being a pack rat and having so much shit to being extremely OCD. Like, everything was immaculate. But to this day, I'm still incredibly OCD. Like, I know where everything is, and my house is immaculate. My mom actually got me this magnet that said "Dull women have immaculate homes," which is kind of like a backhanded compliment. My house is always clean, but I'm dull, And at the age of 12, it was summertime. We were out of school, and I had been going to Boise State to do those, athletics and stuff. And he had come in my room that night. He was wearing this white and blue robe, vertically striped. And I always slept with my door shut because I was scared of the dark. And he came in my room, and I would wear this long pajama shirt to bed every night. And I was sleeping on my stomach, and he had rolled me over and pulled up my pajama shirt and started touching and kissing my body. And after that entire ordeal was over, he pulled my shirt down, and I was pretending to be asleep, like I had learned from a really small age. And he walked to the edge of my room and looked at all the stuff that I had on my floor, like my dirty clothes that I was supposed to fold, and then looked back at me to make sure I was still sleeping, and then walked out and didn't shut my door. And I lifted up my pajama shirt and like wiped him off of me. It was awful. I didn't go to my classes the following morning. I had my sister tell my mom that I needed to talk to her. And so I stayed in my room and waited for my mom to come back, and I let her know what had happened. She kicked him out the next day. He denied everything. Like, I was the crazy one. And so after all of that happened, I ended up having to go to like the hospital and to this CARES unit. I don't even remember what the acronym stands for, but it's they put you in this room with stairs and a whole bunch of teddy bears and like a two-way mirror, and record you while they ask you questions through this, like, I guess a speaker about what had happened. And I had to tell my story to this mirror as I'm looking at myself. And eventually it went to trial. Like, he took it to trial. But before we went to trial, my mom had taken us to the Hostess bread store because she was a sweets addict, basically. And we were there getting Twinkies, and as we were loading stuff up in the back of the Mercury Sable hatchback, there was a shot that rang out, and the shot ended up going through the back of the car and missing my head by just a couple inches. And it turns out that my stepdad had hired somebody that he was in jail with to assassinate me before I was able to testify against him in front of the grand jury. They missed, but it took out both of the windows in the car, and they did an investigation on that. I had to go and testify against him and point him out. It was hard. At 12 years old, you're in front of all these strangers having to go through and tell all this terrible shit that has happened to you as a kid, And so I went and testified against him and pointed him out and then left. And I think it's because he was a cop, he ended up getting 1 year in prison, and he got 10 years probation, had to register as a sex offender. But when he went to prison, he had put away some of the guys that were in there, and being a sex offender, you're like the worst of the worst. And I guess he got beaten and raped within like an inch of his life while he was in there. And so the detective that was working my case came in and told me that had happened. And, as a 12-year-old, I was like, can I write them a letter and thank them? Because you got to get just a little bit of the agony that he had put me through for the last decade.
What was the relationship like with him and your mom at this time?
Well, at that time, after that had happened, she pretty much cut him off. I think she had him come back to the house once or twice to gather his things and probably talk. I can imagine as like a parent and like the struggle it would be going through that, but also like trying to believe that the love of your life has done that to your child. I can't imagine what my mom was going through. And to this day, she's still just devastated by it. But he came back to the house one time, and because we had such a big house, she put me in the basement when he came back to the house, so I wasn't around him at that point. But so after all that was said and done, like he was out of the house, and in prison, we moved from the house I grew up into another home, and I don't know why this happened, but my mom, sister, and I was kicked out of Catholic school. Like the pastor, Father John, said that basically it was my fault that had happened. I don't know why he took my stepdad's side, but I lost my faith at that point. The God that I grew up knowing and loving and worshiping every day had betrayed me. It was... I couldn't believe that a just God that I loved and adored would allow something like that to happen and then, exile me. And so I lost my faith at that point. I ended up having to go from Catholic school into public school. About the time 7th grade came around, I kind of lost my way. I found some new friends. I started smoking cigarettes at that point. I went through junior high with just the same group of friends. 9th grade came around and I went through like my goth phase. I cut off all my hair and dressed in all black, and I was just having a hard time like coping emotionally. My mom put me in counseling. I had to ride my bike over to the counselor. It was a couple times a week. And the thing with counseling, personally, like therapy can work, but I've never had a counselor that has actually helped me. Like they ask me questions about what has happened, but they don't give me a way to fix it. And I've done, 10 plus years of counseling. I've done the EMDR, which was hard, but it's never put me in a spot that has fixed it, And so I'm still dealing with all of this stuff. And by the time I was 19, I ended up getting pregnant with my oldest child, Gabriel. His dad didn't stick around. And by the time I was 20, I met my first husband and got pregnant with my second child. When we found out that I was pregnant, we ended up getting married 4 days after my 21st birthday. And he had 2 children. So at 21, it was a yours, mine, and ours situation, and I had 4 kids. And again, I was out in Parma. I moved in with my then husband to this house, and I was the Stepford wife out there. I didn't work. I just maintained the home and the yard and took care of the kids while he worked. And he was a great dad. He still is a great dad. We got married quick and didn't have a lot in common. I started bartending at the local bar out there, and that's when I started drinking. At 21, I was, just having a couple drinks a night, and then throughout the days, because my husband never did the laundry, I was hiding bottles of vodka in the dirty clothes hamper, and day drinking, and I was just unhappy. And the thing, I was unhappy, so I started drinking, and alcohol's a depressant, and so the more you drink, the more depressed you become. It was just a vicious cycle. I was spiraling out of control. And we tried to go to marriage counseling through our pastor at church. And after he was done talking, it was like a 30-minute thing, telling her all the things that I had done wrong and what a terrible person and wife I was and what a drunk I am. She looked at me and she said, well, obviously you're the problem. And I was like, okay, you just ruined my marriage. He'll never listen to me again with you saying that. I ended up taking both my kids and leaving in the middle of the night. And I moved into an apartment back in Boise. We got divorced. And I started working a job at, I think it was Taco Bell that I was working at, still drinking. I ended up getting my own apartment. I had split custody of my youngest, and I had full custody of my oldest son. And I met my second husband at a job that I got my first DUI at 25. And so I had to find a job that I was able to walk to. So I found a job at the bowling alley that was about a mile away from my house. And I met my second husband there. He was 15 years older than me, never been married, never had kids. I was 25, he was 40. And he was a drinker as well. And the thing is that it worked really well because one alcoholic is now dating another alcoholic, and we don't judge each other on how much the other person drinks. So shower beers and car beers and, drinking in the morning was totally fine. That was just kind of like the logistics of our marriage. And I think I was about 26, we were up at a 4th of July camp out with his family. And I started not feeling okay. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and I had to projectile vomit. And so I barely made it outside, and I puked. And I was like, well, that was weird. I don't really feel bad. But my back was starting to hurt a little bit. And the next morning, when you're camping and you're an alcoholic, the first thing you do is crack open a beer, and I'm drinking the beer, and within 2 swallows, I'm projectile vomiting again. And I was like, what the hell is going on? I can't eat or drink anything. Anytime I do, it just comes right back up. And the only thing I could keep down was straight vodka. And so I'm just drinking straight vodka because that's the only sustenance that my body is allowing me to take. And we leave camping and we get back to town, and I'm sitting in my apartment, and I'm not feeling good. I can't stay out of the bathroom. Every 30 minutes I'm in the bathroom. At one point I was taking a shower and I went blind. It went completely dark. And I called my husband. We got married. I called him and I was like, I can't see. I'm blind. I don't know what's going on. And he goes, sit down. I'm going to help you out of the shower. And so eventually it came from black to white, and then I got my vision back, but it was the damnedest thing. And I was sitting there watching The West Wing, and I called my mom, and I'm like, I think I have the flu. I'm not feeling well. My back really hurts. And she said, I'm going to take you to the hospital. And I was like, I don't have medical insurance. I can't go to the hospital. And she's like, Vivian, I'm taking you to the hospital. Get dressed. I'll be there in 5 minutes. And so I went to the hospital. I got checked into the ER, and they took a blood, urine, and fecal sample. And within 10 minutes, the doctor was in there. And he said, we're going to admit you into the ICU. You're in renal failure. And I was like, what does that mean? And he was like, basically, your kidneys and liver are not, the toxins that they're supposed to filter out are being dumped back into your bloodstream because they're not working. So your internal organs are shutting down, and you're dying. And I was like, oh, I just thought I had the flu. So they put me in ICU, and they put all these different IVs in me. And I started instantly detoxing and hallucinating. And I got to the point where I ripped all of my IVs out, and they had to come in and have 4 male nurses hold me down because I was trying to leave. Like, I don't remember this. This is what I'm told from the doctors and nurses. But I was trying to leave, and so they strapped me down to the bed and had to give me, like, a few cc's of sedative in my butt just to strap me down because I was just hell-bent to get the hell out. And so I was in a coma for 2 weeks. My heart rate a couple times was up over 200 beats per minute. They had to shock my heart back into a regular rhythm or else I was going to have a heart attack. I finally woke up after 2 weeks, and I had no idea where I was. I don't even remember going to the hospital at this point. And so I try and, like, get out of bed, but I'm strapped to the bed. My bed makes, like, this beeping sound. And so the nurses come in, see that I'm awake. They take out my breathing tube. I had a PICC line in my heart because I had ripped out all of my IVs. And I can't talk after they take out the breathing tube. And so I'm having to, like, write on a whiteboard. And it looks like a child is writing it because my muscles had deteriorated so much. They were atrophied, laying there for 2 weeks, not moving. And they told me, you know, you'll be able to go home once you're able to walk up 3 flights of stairs, because I lived on the 3rd floor of an apartment complex. And so they put this, like, belt around my waist and have one nurse behind me and another one beside me. And I run up the stairs, basically, and I come back down, and I'm, like, so ready to go home. And then I was asleep for, like, a day and a half because it was exhausting. Like, my body was just tired. Like, I'd never been that exhausted before, just from walking upstairs. It took me 6 months to be able to walk and behave normally again, physically. I was down for a really long time. I had to do, like, physical therapy to be able to regain regular movement in my muscles and be able to walk or stand normally. I was sober for 9 months after that, and my husband and I bought a house together. And the real estate agent, her husband worked for Anheuser-Busch, and so as a housewarming present, she brought us a bottle of wine. And so I'm like, oh, what's a glass of wine? You know, I've been good for 9 months. It's no big deal. Well, a glass of wine turned into a bottle and a half of wine and a new tattoo later. And it was just, there I went again, downhill. I ended up kind of losing my mind towards my husband. At one point, he and I had gotten into a fight. I was bartending at our bowling alley that we had met at. And I came home one night, and he's sitting on his netbook playing poker, and he has 2 beers sitting next to him and then an open beer in his hand. And I looked at him, and I was like, don't you have to work in the morning? Because it was late. And he said that he had, or that he had to. So I'm like, well, I'm just going to put your other beers back in the fridge. And I grabbed his open one, and I dumped it out, and that was the worst mistake I could have made, because you don't mess with an alcoholic's alcohol. It's just something you don't do. And when I dumped out his beer, he lost his mind. And so he grabs my vodka bottle out of the freezer and starts dumping it out, like, how do you like this? And I freaked out, and I grabbed the bottle from him, and I hit him on the shoulder with the plastic bottle, and he grabbed me by the hair and put my hair down in the garbage disposal, and he punched me 5 times in the face, and he broke my back tooth here. And I swore, like, if anybody ever hit me, like, we were done. I left him for about a week to try and recoup, and he quit drinking after that. Like, that was it for him, and I didn't. And I remained bitter about him hitting me. And because of my sexual assault, I feel that I sought validation through sex. Like, if somebody thought I was pretty or wanted me, that's how they showed it, was that they would want to sleep with me, right? And so that was my way of, like, feeling normal. And my husband, because he was older, he wasn't always, like, in the mood when I was, and I would take it personally. And this one night, we were up in bed, and I was trying to come on to him, and he turned me down, and I lost it. And I told him, like, if you don't want to sleep with me, you can go sleep the fuck downstairs on the couch, and I was just mean to him, and I threw his phone at him as he was getting his socks on to go sleep downstairs, and I missed because I was drunk, and he wasn't moving fast enough, and so I grabbed him by the ear to pull him up off of the bed, and when I did that, my hand slipped and I scratched his face. That wasn't enough. He still wasn't moving fast enough, and so when he got to the top of the stairs, I basically Sparta kicked him down 13 stairs to the bottom. I kicked him in the back, and he flew down the stairs and hit the bottom. And at that point, I wasn't sorry. The next morning, I was. But yeah, it was bad. I was angry. I had a lot of anger issues, and of course, drinking didn't help that at all. And he didn't say anything about it. The next morning, we just kind of brushed it off like it didn't happen. And I ended up going to rehab. I put myself in intensive inpatient treatment for 48 days. And I was out there, and I learned a lot about myself. But after rehab, I did intensive outpatient treatment for 6 months. I had classes 4 days a week that I was going to just try and get better. And then I was doing AA, and I started chairing AA meetings, and all of this was on my own volition. I was like, I have to get better. Something has to change, because the person that kicked him down the stairs is not the person that I am. It's a monster. And so after 6 months of IOP and me being sober, and my husband was still sober, we really didn't have much in common anymore. We had a lot in common when we were drinking together.
Did seeing him get sober while you didn't create a...
Yeah, there was definitely a conflict there.
What was going on in your head while you watched that happen?
I hated myself. I hated myself. I didn't know how he could be strong enough just to quit, and I couldn't. And that's why I put myself in rehab. I'm like, something has to change, And so we ended up filing for divorce. We sat down and wrote out our own divorce papers, and he became a traveling electrician. He let me stay in the house while he was gone. He was only home 2 days a week, 2 weeks a year. And that was around his birthday in December, around Christmas and stuff. But I moved out of the master bedroom and took one of the other bedrooms that was upstairs in the house. And I started dating, and I dated this guy who he looked like Chris Daughtry. I thought he was just smoking hot, And he enjoyed my personality. I'm super quirky. I'm singing and making silly voices and stuff all the time, and he never condemned me for that. He didn't make me feel stupid for being myself, which I really liked. And he introduced me to meth in 2016, and that shit stole my soul. I only did it for 4 months, but man, I pretty much lost everything in that time. I also got another DUI in that year. And I was on felony probation and doing meth. The choices that I was making, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of what I was doing, and that my kids were around that. I have really good children. And I had lost both the jobs that I had had. At first, I started doing the meth. I was like, oh, this is great. I can work both jobs. I'm not tired. And then I started having to do more, and then I would have the drug dealer drop it off to my second job, and so I would just eat it while I was working. And it got to the point where I would go and pick it up from the drug dealer's house, and my boyfriend was in the passenger seat, and he was like, I'm going to come in with you. And I said, no, you're not, because he doesn't know you, and you're going to ruin this for me. And he was insistent that he was going to come in, and so I had a taser in my car. I'm sorry, I'm not laughing because this is just a terrible thing. And because he was insistent on going into the dealer's house with me, I tased him in the chest, and I told him to stay the fuck put. You're not going in. I'm sorry for laughing, but So he stayed in the car. I went in and I re-upped my stuff. And I ended up, I lost both my kids, my house, my jobs. It was all gone. I went to jail for probation violation.
Why did you really want him not to come in?
Because the drug dealers, if they don't know somebody, they won't allow him in the house. And I didn't want him to stop providing for me because somebody new was around. And it's sketchy, you know. You don't know if they're an undercover cop or who the fuck they are, if they're going to rat on you. And I didn't want to lose my drug dealer, you know. So that he thought that I was sleeping with a drug dealer, and that's why he wanted to come in with me. And that was not the case at all. That's
why I asked.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. He and I ended up getting into multiple fights, and it was very physical. The last fight that we got in was on New Year's Eve. He wanted me to stay up and watch the ball drop, and I was tired. I had to go the next morning to volunteer at this Christian community center because I had to do volunteer hours and stuff. And so I went into bed, and he comes in. I can't tell you how long it was before he came in the room, and he grabbed me by the ankle and ripped me off of the bed. And I don't sleep with clothes on, so I'm naked. And he pulls me off the bed, and he's pulling me out into the hallway. And he had shut the dogs in the other bedroom because he knew that they would attack him for what he was about to do. And he gets on top of me. He's got his knees on my chest, and he's wailing on my face, like just punching me super hard. And like I'm trying to block him and also fight back. And I ended up getting like a boxer's fracture from hitting him to try and get him off of me. And after he beat the shit out of me, like he choked me out, and I ended up blacking out, and I wake up to him putting me out front naked. It's snowing outside. It's December 31st. And so I'm naked outside, and I have to find somewhere to go. I don't have my cell phone or anything. So I go to the neighbor's house, and I'm like crouched down on their porch asking them to call my mom. Like I didn't call the police because I was under the influence, and I was also on felony probation. And so my mom had to come and get me. They gave me clothes and stuff, and I ended up having a fractured orbital bone. He broke my jaw and my cheekbone. I had a black eye for almost 2 months. It was bad. That was the end of our relationship. I ended up going over to my drug dealer's house after that, and we were hanging out, and I was snorting, smoking, eating, booty bumping meth, and I couldn't get high anymore. And I told my dealer that, and he was like, well, you could do what I do. And I was like, well, what's that? And he shoots up. And so he found a vein in my left arm, and he shot me up, and he took the little rubber thing off my arm. And I'm just waiting for like the panty dropper, the thing that everybody says, is supposed to be super great. And I'm like, how long is this supposed to take? And he goes, it's instant. And I'm like, I'm gonna go home. And that was the last time I ever used meth. Like I was just done. Like I couldn't get high anymore. It wasn't fun. I had already lost everything. I was pretty much defeated. And then I ended up getting a PV and going to jail. And in jail, I was in there just a few days, and they sent me to prison. And I did a rider. It's like 9 months of basically inpatient treatment, and you have to take classes and work on yourself. And I was in prison from January until September. I got out and had to start my life over again. And I got this job at a gas station, and I started doing really well. Like just personally, financially, everything I was myself again, it felt like. And so I started my own cleaning company, and I quit my job after 3 years at the gas station, and I had this pretty successful cleaning company. But at the time I was working at the gas station is when I met my third husband, now ex. He was just some guy that would come in every day, and he would buy Red Bulls and Marlboro Reds and lottery tickets, and I thought he was super cute. And the gay guy that I worked with is like, get his number, And I did, and he took me out for my birthday. We went to this haunted world, and he ended up pushing me down in the mud and running away because he was scared. And I should have seen that as a red flag, but I thought it was funny. But we ended up dating, and we were together for about a year, and then we got married in Vegas. And pretty much from the time we got back after getting married, he works for this big company back in town, and they were working on a nuclear power plant that was about 4 hours away from town. So he ended up working out of town for quite some time, and he would only be back on the weekends. And the first year of our marriage was basically him out of town except for on Saturdays and Sundays. And we were making it work. It was okay. Like, I didn't mind, holding down the fort and being alone and seeing him just a couple days a week. I would go and visit him out of town when I could. My cleaning business was doing really well. I was planning all these trips and really upgrading my life basically. And I was still sober at this point. I was like four years sober after getting out of prison. And I started noticing when I was going to the bathroom that there were issues. And after a while, I went to the doctor and got tested, and it turned out that I had a sexually transmitted infection. So all these times that he was telling me that he was hunting or working late, I had no reason to doubt him. I just really thought that that's what he was doing, but he wasn't. And he gave me trichomoniasis, and he came back early. I went out and bought a car because I was driving his truck at the time. I took all my stuff out of his truck. I took his name off of all the bills. And he came back early from work, and I just let him have it. I was standing outside when he showed up, moving my stuff into my new car that I had just bought. And he was like, "Whose car is that?" And I said, "It's mine." And then I lost it. I was screaming at him in front of all the neighbors and everybody that was outside. I was hurt. I was upset that that's what had happened, And it's just like another failed marriage. I failed again. I just can't get it right, And he swore up and down that it wasn't him, that's not what it is. And I was like, "Get your ass in the car, we're gonna go to the doctor." And so he did, and I'm screaming and crying at him as we're driving to the doctor's office. He gets tested, he doesn't have anything. So he turns it around on me. Well, while he was out of town, he got antibiotics and got it cured before he came back home. So he turns it back around on me, saying that I'm the one that's cheating and all this stuff. And it's almost like I believed him. It was so weird how he flipped it around on me and made it like it was me that was the one that was doing the bad shit. It turns out that while he was not only running around on me, he was also gambling away. I'm like, "You're making so much money. Where's all your money going? You only have a truck payment that you have, And he ended up having a gambling problem, and I found out the hard way. I lost a lot of money because of him for my business and had to shut it down. And we tried to work things out. We went to counseling, and I bought this trip, packaged lodging to this hot springs in Paradise, Montana, and we drove out there. It was a 9-hour drive from where we live, and we were trying to reconnect and fix things because I was bound and determined, this is my third marriage, I have to make it work, And so we get to Paradise, Montana, and we get in the room, and there's a bottle of wine and a bottle of champagne. And he was like, "Are you okay with this?" And so I was like, what the hell? We're on vacation. We're trying to make things work. It might make talking a little easier. And so we started drinking, and then we went to the hot springs. We were having a good time. It was kind of like when we first started dating again. We went back to the room, and I had brought these dice with us, sex dice. And you roll it and do whatever it says on the dice. And I went to perform fellatio on him, and he was uncircumcised. So it didn't smell good. And I told him that, and he lost his fucking mind on me. That was it. I said, your dick stinks. And that was like the determining factor that ended my marriage. He lost it on me and he started screaming at me. And like, he pulled out his phone and started recording me, telling me how crazy and stupid and all this stuff that I am. And I got to the point where I put on a robe and I'm like trying to calm him down, and he's still filming me, which was the weirdest. I don't know why he had his phone out, just videotaping me. And it got to the point where he had shoved me down on the bed and he raped and sodomized me. And I'm able to get away from him at one point, and he takes my phone and my keys and he opens the door and he chucks them into the river that's outside of our cabin. And I run out there like, what the fuck, you know? Like that's, and so I go find it, and he goes, that's what you get, you stupid fucking bitch. And he slams the door and locks me out. And it's January in a blizzard. I'm bleeding in a robe. And my stuff is in the river, and I can't see it. It's dark outside, and he won't let me in. And so the only thing I think to do is go to the lodge. And so I'm like running to this lodge in the middle of a snowstorm in January in nothing but a bathrobe. And he comes out of the cabin and starts yelling at me to come back. And I'm just running faster, like I want to get away from him. He gets in the truck and starts coming after me. But I make it to the lodge before he's able to get to me. And it's after hours. The security guard is standing inside at the counter talking to the clerk. And I burst in the door, and he was like, hey, sorry, the door's supposed to be locked. We're closed. And I was like, I need help. He's coming after me. I just got raped. And so he puts me in the manager's office, and he calls the police and does a citizen's arrest on my husband. So I have to wait for the paramedics to get there, and they come in, and this woman has me lean over the manager's desks and examines me. She pulls up the robe and sees the damage that has been done, and they put me on a gurney and take me to the hospital. They provide an advocate for me. I ended up leaving the hospital and going back to the hotel by myself. They drove me back there, and the security guard had found my phone and put it in rice, so it was able to work again, but I didn't have any way to get home. A friend of mine bought me a plane ticket, and I left the hotel. The advocate drove me to the airport, which was an hour and a half away in Missoula. And I'm sitting in the airport waiting for my flight, and I'm looking out at the tarmac, watching like the sun go down. And I had a couple of drinks and a big plate of nachos, and the next thing I know, I am face down on the ground, and there's blood all around me, and like I can't move, and I have men yelling at me to quit resisting. And I was like, I had just been assaulted by my husband, and now I'm waking up to blood all around me and men saying, stop resisting, stop resisting. So I'm fighting. Of course I'm going to resist. I don't know what the hell's going on. And apparently, I don't know if this is some sort of like emotional blackout or whatever happened, but I had like a mental breakdown on the plane. I got on the plane. They ended up kicking me off the plane and taking me to a hotel that's outside of the airport. And I lost my mind. Like, I got out of the car that they had dropped me off at the hotel at. It was a couple security guards. And I run into the hotel up to the counter, and there's these two young girls that are working there. And I was like, please help me. He's coming after me. And they're like, do we need to call the police? And I didn't say anything. I just kept like walking back and looking out the doors. And then I'd go back up to the counter, and I'm like, you stupid fucking bitch, please help me. And they were so confused. They had no idea what's going on. And I'm yelling at them to help me. They end up calling the police. But at that moment, like I ran into the little snack and convenient area for the hotel. And I just start like punching the door to one of the vending machines, and then I ripped open the door and I started pulling out like all the sodas that are in there, just knocking everything out of there. And then I run back out to the lobby to the counter, And I'm like, fucking help me. He's coming after me. And I keep looking out the door, like, and then I run away. And this is all stuff that I see as later on that my lawyer provided for me, because I don't remember any of it. And I ended up running back to the airport from the hotel. I lost a shoe at some point, and the body cam footage from the police officer is me just sitting in this empty hallway at the airport, just staring out into the abyss, not moving. And they were like, Vivian, are you Vivian? Like, we're here to help you. You know, let us know, is your name Vivian? And I just kept staring. And he came up to me, one of them did, and he touched my arm. And I said, don't fucking touch me. And then I just went back to like staring into nothingness. And he was like, we're here to help you, Vivian. Like, we just need you to tell us, is that your name? And he touched my arm again, and I got up and I just started running again. And I'm running away from these cops, and they catch up to me and they grab me, and I just sat down on the ground and started like crying hysterically. Like, and you couldn't understand anything I'm saying. I'm crying so hard, and they're just trying to like get me up and help me. But I ended up getting arrested for causing a disturbance at the hotel, and I pushed a computer off of the counter, and so they took me to jail that night. But the face down on the ground and the blood and the quit resisting was, they had me handcuffed and sitting up against one of the cruisers outside talking to each other, and I got up and started running again, and handcuffed, and they tackled me and put me down on the ground, and they split my chin open. And that's what all that was. And so they ended up hog tying me and putting me face down in the cruiser with like this helmet on, because I kept trying to like get out of it. Like, I just wasn't there. So they take me to jail, and the next morning I go and see the judge, and I have no idea why I'm there. Nobody will tell me anything. And the judge is telling me that I'm not allowed back at the place that I was arrested. And I thought that I was still at the airport, and I was like, well, I have to get home. You know, I can't be banned from the airport. And he was like, no, I'm talking about the hotel. And I said, what hotel? And my public defender was like, quit talking. Stop talking, be quiet. And I'm like, I wasn't at a hotel. And they said, yes, you were. That's, where you got all these charges and stuff for. They ended up RORing me. I went home. I ended up having to pay restitution for damaging all of that stuff at the hotel. But as my lawyer's telling me all of this stuff that happened, because I still had no idea, he said that the girls that were behind the counter were young. And I started crying. Like, I scared the shit out of these two young girls who were just doing their job. I'm terrifying them because I'm yelling at them and throwing shit at them, and they don't know what's going on. I traumatized these two girls for the rest of their life because of something that had happened to me. It's just like I just feel terrible. Like, if I could ever apologize to them in person, I would. I don't think they would ever want to see me again, though. So I ended up paying restitution for, it was like $1,500 in damages for everything that I had caused there. And then I came back home, and I got security cameras for my house because my husband is still in jail in Montana, and they're supposed to let me know if he ever gets released. Well, they didn't let me know, but I had installed security cameras, and I was at work one day, and I saw that there was movement on my front porch, and he's back, and he's trying to break into my house. And the only thing I could think of is like my kids' safety. And so I ended up I left work and got a restraining order filed against him, which he didn't ever break, but he just wanted his stuff, like his PlayStation and his video games, and just bullshit, At least that's what he told the judge. I don't really know his true intentions for him being there. And so I don't know where he's at now. We ended up getting divorced, but I got to the point where I was so emotionally unstable that I cut off all of my hair again. I kind of did the Britney Spears thing. I shaved all the sides of my head, and I had this like war hawk thing going on. And I was bouncing from job to job because I was drinking so much I couldn't hold a steady job. I was fucking miserable.
It was just the alcohol making you crazy.
Yeah. And I've noticed all of my arrest pictures, like I always have short hair, so it's like the shorter my hair is, the more mentally unstable I am. And so I've told my friends, I'm like, if I ever cut my hair again, I'm not okay. So I ended up just pretty much living at a bar, not working. I had my kids do DoorDash for me. Like, what a piece of shit, Mom. I'm like, you go to work so I can continue to drink. But they did. They loved me enough to just put up with it. And my youngest was the one that spoke up, though. My oldest was just whatever. But my youngest put me in my place a few times. My youngest, Ezra, is transgender, born Mariska, now identifies as he, or they, them. And I was the first person that Ezra came out to, and they were terrified to tell me, thinking that I wouldn't love them anymore. And I said, I don't care if you're purple and an inanimate object, I'm still going to love you the same. Like, I don't care if you love boys or girls or whatever. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters to me. But my youngest is very vocal when it came to my drinking, especially the worse that it got. And I was lying to everybody about how much I was actually drinking. It was bad. You would think after, being in renal failure and all the shit that I had gone through and prison time and jail, and that would be enough to stop. But I always justified my drinking as like, well, it makes me feel better. Like, I don't have to feel anything. I don't have to think about shit that's happened to me in the past. Like, poor Vivian, I'm the only person that matters in my life. And I ended up dating this guy that I met at the bar, and I had planned on moving back to Oklahoma, where I'm from. And I was about 3 days away from moving. I had packed all my stuff. My oldest had moved out of the house, and my youngest and I were going to move to Oklahoma. And I was going out to Caldwell to go see my best friend. And I had my boyfriend's 2 young kids in the car with me. And I, of course, was drinking and driving. And this guy went to go merge in front of me on the freeway, and he hit my car. And there wasn't a place to, pull off except for when you get off the connector to the Winco out there. And so by the time we got to the Winco, he had already called the police. And they obviously smelled alcohol on my breath, and so they performed all of their standard field sobriety tests on me, and I passed every single one of them except the breathalyzer. And when I blew, I asked the cop when the last time his machine was calibrated, because there was no way that was real. I blew a .497. And then after 15 minutes, he made me blow again, and I blew a .495. And that's like 5 times over the legal limit. Like, my blood was 5% alcohol at that point. Like, I was drinking so much that I was able to function with that much alcohol in my system. It's bad.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And the judge, I ended up going to jail, and the judge is like, you should be dead. Like, that is way above a lethal dose for a man, like a big man, let alone a tiny person such as myself. And he was pissed. The judge was very mad at me. He basically threw the book at me. I ended up getting a prison sentence again. I had to go back and do another writer. But this time in prison, I did a lot of work on myself. I ended up going back to church and believing in something higher than me, not the God that I grew up knowing and loving through Catholicism, but I found something bigger than me that I'm able to believe in again. And I also started going back to AA, and it really made a difference in my life. And one of the hardest things I ever had to say was that I chose my addiction over my own children. And when I came to that realization that that's the piece of shit mom that I was for a while, it was eye-opening. Like, I chose my addiction over my kids, my own flesh and blood, the babies that I carried in my belly for 9 months. And, taking accountability for my actions. Every other time I had been arrested, it was the cop's fault. It was the judge's fault. It was everybody else's fault but my own. And this time I was accountable for my actions. Like, I'm the only person that put me in the situation that I was in. And my life changed at that point. Like, it was just completely and utterly a 180. Mentally and emotionally, I was able to start working on myself. I did my rider again, my 9 months in prison. And I got out, and I've been doing really well. Like, I've been through some shit, but my story is no different than anybody else's. Everybody's gone through some stuff. I can't say that I'm better or worse than someone else when it comes to what I've been through. But I now go back and I volunteer at the prison that used to confine me. I'm still on felony probation, but I'm on low supervision at this point. I got 5 years for my third DUI. And I bring AA every other Friday out to the women's prison, and then I bring Life Church, which is a Christian belief, every other Tuesday with Pastor Lori, who I met while I was in prison. And it's sad, but it's heartwarming to see some of the girls that I was in there with originally come back. And I always tell them, like, I'm so glad you're here. And they kind of look at me weird, but it's because they're safe and they're sober and they're alive. Like, I'd rather have them be in prison than out running the streets like they were. And I tell the girls in there that prison is not meant to define you. Like, your past is just meant to be something to help you be a better person. Like, I'm stronger now because of all the shit that I've been through. I can help people that have been through some terrible shit by giving them guidance and pointing them in the right direction on how to get help or what to do in certain situations. Like, I'm not a counselor or anything, but I can definitely give these people, like, my opinion as to how they should help themselves. And the girls that are in there, they're grateful. And to see all these women come together and just believe in themselves again, like, that's big. When you go into prison, you're at the lowest of low. Like, you've lost everything. You've lost your family, your home, your life, your belongings, everything that you've had in your world. And it's a very lonely feeling. And having those women in there that are making something of themselves, that are wanting to do better for them so they can get out and be the mom, the sister, the wife, the girlfriend that they know that they can be, is monumental. And I tell them, like, you can't build a home on a cracked foundation. Like, make this the beginning of your solid foundation for yourself. And then once you have a solid foundation, you can build a sturdy home. You can get out of prison and rebuild this life that you're capable of, but didn't have the tools to do so beforehand. And I was asked by my counselor in prison before I left, like, what's one thing that you could change if you had the opportunity? And I said, these girls need therapy. Like, the classes that they put you through in prison are just talking about everything that made you become an addict in the first place, all your traumas, all your addictions and everything like that. They're opening these wounds for these women and not even giving them a Band-Aid to fix it. And then they send them back out in the world bleeding, thinking that they're going to be able to survive and not reoffend. It's a setup. Like, they're not helping these people at all. They're just hurting them more by making them talk about their traumas and not giving them a way to fix it. And if there was a way for somebody to, like, have a therapist out there to help these women talk about their traumas and actually work through them, like, and not just give them stepping stones on how to not drink or do drugs or put yourself in a terrible situation again. Like, some of those girls are going to get out and just be back in their small town that they came from, and where the only thing that is there is sex and drugs. You know, they're not putting them in a situation to succeed, even though that's what they say that they're doing. So 5% of those girls that are out there aren't going to go back, but 95% will. It's keeping these people with jobs. And it's sad to see this continuing to happen. It's a revolving door. And I can't imagine, like, being a correctional officer or somebody that works at the jail, just seeing the same faces over and over and over again. It would be defeating. And so I'm trying to go out there and help them to realize that there's more to life than just the shit that brought us down to put us in prison in the first place, the traumas and the terrible behaviors. And I love the fact that they see light in themselves and a light at the end of the tunnel as well. I'm really proud of how far these women are coming, and I love going out there and helping them. You know, both my kids I'm blessed. They don't drink or do drugs or sleep around. It's like they learned from me. You know, it's the old saying, do as I say, not as I do. And, you know, my youngest talked to me about it and is like, I don't want to end up like you.
They learned what not to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of them. Like, they're both really hard workers. They have integrity. Like, they do the right things all the time. And I'm so blessed that those are the two things in my life that are, you know, 100% right. I'm so proud of my kids. And my mom has remarried this wonderful man. She's been with him for about 19 or 20 years now. He's a chiropractor. And I was so standoffish with this man at first because of what I had been through with the other one. But he's just proven himself as a loyal partner for my mother and a father to me. Like, I call him my dad because he has definitely more than earned that title. Like, I would die for him. He is just an incredible person. And the life that I have now is 180 degrees different from the life that I was, and the path that I was on 5 years ago. And I never could have dreamed something this good for myself. And I'm incredibly grateful. And I thank God, my higher power, whoever, every night for just this life that I live now. I should be dead, Mark. I should be dead over and over and over again. I'm grateful that I never killed anybody, and for the hundreds of times I drove drunk. I'm very grateful for everything in my life right now, and I couldn't have asked or prayed for a better life. Yeah.
It's a wonderful story.
Thank you.
Vivian, let me ask you one last question. What would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in all of this?
To love myself. I hated myself for so long. And I used to hate looking at myself in the mirror, and now I don't. I like the person that I am, who I've become. I'm not ashamed of my behaviors and my actions anymore. I finally love myself, and it took me 41 years to do that. But it's great. I'm so happy. And I've never been happy before in my life. I didn't know how to be happy. I always thought that I needed a man to prove my worth, you know, if I wasn't a complete person, if I didn't have a man in my life. And now it's the total opposite. Like, I don't want anybody around. I'm content. You know, I like going home to my dogs every night and my plants. It's a good life that I have now. But I finally learned to love myself.
It's wonderful. It's great that you were able to turn yourself around.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. What a great story.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vivian.
Thank you.
When I was designing the first White Underbelly book,
I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.